Hello, Rena.
Hello, Dr. Bach.
Welcome, everyone, to a free association conversation between Rena K and myself, Dr. Bach Ho. We're both organic intelligence coaches. We help people reduce suffering and increase capacity to handle more in life with ease using the protocols of organic intelligence. Links in the description to learn more about both of us. In these live stream free association conversations, Rena and I try to aim both at people who are completely new to organic intelligence and people who already know its basics. We try to find the balance. Today, our topic is working with trauma by working without it. And so you and I we've been on a central question for the past, we've been on a theme organically for the past 3 conversations and then continuing now to this 4th conversation. And the theme is organic intelligence's 2 fundamentals of orientation and pleasure really enough? Is it really everything? Does it do the work it needs to do, heal trauma, resolve root issues? There's a lot of skepticism about that. And is it really true that orientation and pleasure are the key and more or less comprehensive if understood correctly? That's my, in the moment, not prepared remarks on the central theme of the past 3 conversations and continuing into this 4th. And we're going to continue. Crypto Bro has given me more comments, which I find interesting. So we'll go through that. And it aligns with the title of working with trauma by working without trauma. So I'm going to share his remarks and read them through. We may go paragraph by paragraph. We'll see, but at least I want to read them through so that he gets the honor of the full delivery. Before that, one comment. So in my boilerplate opening, I said that we try to aim both at people who are completely new to organic intelligence and to people who already know its basics. In the past 3 sessions, I think, and today, I think we're more aiming inevitably towards people who already have some background. So if you're new to organic intelligence and just joining us, this will be pitched at a bit of a higher level. And if you're interested in this conversation specifically and you want the full context, I invite you to go back to the prior 3 conversations. And eventually, Rena and I hopefully will get back to more basic intro to OI level. I think that'd be good for people because if they're new. Okay, thank you for listening to all that. Let me share. Did you want to say anything, Rena, before I start sharing?
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. Let me. All right. So I'll just begin here. Thank you again, Crypto Bro. Okay. Hey, thanks for addressing my response. It was actually pretty helpful and elucidating. Feel free to read out, paraphrase, or not respond to any of the below. I was ambivalent about using the term, quote, energetic residue, hence the quotes, because I know it can have woo-woo connotations associated with it. I guess, quote, the discharge of stored activation and completion of incomplete survival responses, end quote, is less woo, but honestly, it still feels just as vague and nebulous a description to me. Your description of, quote, a glob of stuff, end quote, works just fine in my opinion, lol. And your take on what that glob means for people skeptical of OI is spot on too. For me, that, quote, glob, end quote, feels like the source of my myriad mental, emotional, and physical symptoms. And there is the belief that if I don't actually go into it and feel it, it will stay stuck. And therefore, so too will the symptoms. But then Rena also hit the nail on the head, saying, embedded in this view is the assumption that the glob of stuff will stay the same, or at least only change/reduce superficially through OI. Regarding the criticism that feel it to heal it models can make people worse, I guess the counterpoint would be that it wasn't done in a titrated way, or that enough nervous system capacity hadn't been developed through resourcing before engaging in the sensation slash affect stuff. That said, I'm also open to the idea that the practitioner did do everything right and the client still got wrecked after. What I will say though is that having been in the nervous system healing space for a while, most of the recovery stories I've come across from people who were heavily debilitated, parenthesis housebound slash not worked in years, involved them feeling that glob of stuff in deep, uncomfortable, and sometimes terrifying ways. Sometimes sensation and affect so intense they thought they'd lose their mind or die. By quote recovery, end quote, I don't mean just feeling worse in a session and then better afterward, or feeling numb and calling that progress. I'm talking about real shifts. Symptoms like 24/7 depersonalization and derealization, relentless anxiety, chronic fatigue, brain fog, etc., all actually going away. Most of these people credit feeling that glob as the key to the resolution of these symptoms and getting their life back. OI seems to argue that by working within thresholds, healing can be more efficient, less painful, and less risky. And yeah, the analogy you used about pounding keys sums it up. Yes, feeling the glob intensely can result in symptom resolution and getting your life back. But here is an alternative method, which is low effort, low intensity, and can also offer real healing too. I guess it just comes down to there still being this parenthesis erroneous question mark, close parenthesis, belief that for those in deep phase one, real healing has to be effortful and involve intense confrontation with that glob. That's the dominant narrative in the nervous system space, and it's hard to let go of. Pretty much everyone I've shared the principles of OI with has expressed the same skepticism. Thanks, Crypto Bro. Thank you. Immediately, just one comment from me before I open perhaps to Rena. When Crypto Bro refers to phase one, that's more technical and you can ignore it if you're new to organic intelligence, and it just means someone who's just very quickly, someone who's suffering a lot. The glob is really big and they're suffering a lot. Just that's enough for our context, I think.
Yeah.
I see that. So thank you, CryptoBo, for the thoughtful remarks. And it's a lot that we could process in many directions. I'm going to invite Rena to see if you have an instinct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I just want to, express some sympathy for the deep skepticism and the fact that the dominant narrative is that you have to feel all of that, and so it's really hard to believe that can be possible. That maybe that's not necessary, and organic intelligence not only is suggesting it's not necessary, but it's actually not the safest way to do healing work, right? So, but the narrative has been around for a long time, and so of course that's what people feel. And then yes, there are people who have experienced some pretty significant radical change by sitting with these kinds of things. They've often done that in a meditative kind of way. And my initial thoughts to some of that is, especially because Crypto Bro brought up derealization, depersonalization, and those kinds of experiences. So often, what's creating that is what the meaning channel is doing. So we talk about the different parts of our ways of being, and so there's all kinds of thoughts and very unpleasant thoughts that typically keep those states in place. And so I think what I've noticed, and I could be wrong on this, but what I've kind of noticed is that very often when those thoughts get confronted and then they are shown to be not necessarily true, or there are other thoughts that are more true, for some people, going through that process can help because the meaning channel is holding so much of that experience of depersonalization, derealization in place.
One moment. Could you explain those two terms, depersonalization and derealization?
Yeah, these are terms that are used in psychology where there's a sense of disconnection from the self, a sense of disconnection from feeling like being in the present world, feeling, people will talk about feeling like they're out of their body, watching themselves or looking at themselves or watching the world from outside of themselves. So it's a particular brain activity that creates that sensation of I'm not real, the world's not real, and I can't feel myself in it other than being like outside of myself.
Thank you. Please continue. Please, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, just as I said, just starting off is I totally get why people would feel or think, probably more accurately, that people think that it couldn't be possible to heal in a different way. And Crypto Bros certainly suggesting that he is open to that possibility,
Right.
even if the skepticism still resounds. And it was interesting. I was just having a conversation with somebody who has done some work with somebody who also worked with me. And so this person was a client of mine, and then now has done this work with another colleague. And the colleague was saying to me how much change has happened in this person since we did the organic intelligence work together. That her system, even if she, in this case, a female, even if she goes into these negative states, automatically her system does the oscillation. And what a difference that was from when this colleague had worked with her like a year prior. And so in the year that we had worked together, there was a complete change in the system by doing organic intelligence. And so, and the comment we were having that we shared with each other is it's almost impossible to believe. It's very hard to believe that these kind of changes can happen in the way that you and I have been talking about and suggesting until you experience it. Like when you actually experience that by feeling better, you actually feel better, then you go, well, wow, like I had no idea that could be. And this particular client, I had that conversation with when I first started with this person because, she was like, I just don't believe it. Like I've been, and she literally said, I just listened to this woman. She said you had to feel it to heal it. Like that was just what she had said or heard just before she had her first session with me. And I said, well, we'll see how that is and whether that's the case or not. Because I'm not going to counter that idea in a one-on-one session.
Right.
But the person discovered through experience that, in fact, that can be the possibility.
Thank you. Um, I want to say something big picture, which may be offensive to some people, but I'm going to do it anyway. Um, I'm not expecting people to believe me, but going with your idea that the client never in a million years, or he shouldn't say, but it was disbelief that the organic intelligence focus on orientation and pleasure worked, right? It was disbelief. I couldn't imagine. Everyone told me I had to feel it to heal it. Let me continue with that. So, Crypto Bro, thank you for your comments, and maybe we'll get in, and we will. I would like to get into them in detail, maybe in the future also. So not just today because it's only half an hour, but one big picture comment right now that I want to get out, and hopefully I can articulate it. So one theme from Crypto Bro's comments, expressing many people's attitude, is that organic intelligence. Okay, sorry, I'm having to gather my thoughts in the moment. Apologize for the lack of eloquence. So you have mainstream approaches to trauma therapy or resolving symptoms, feel it to heal it. And here comes organic intelligence, and it says you don't necessarily have to. You can do it through low intensity, through pleasure, through non-effort, and it's less harmful. And we're in the dialectic between the two. How can organic intelligence be true? How can it make sense? One assumption people may have, I'm not saying may have in their minds, is that mainstream approaches are like Western medicine, very powerful, very potent, but with serious side effects. The power is resolution of symptoms. The side effects is, but it's very uncomfortable and harmful, and people feel like they want to die when they feel their feelings, but you got to feel it to heal it. So they may think, oh, mainstream standard trauma therapy is like Western medicine, very powerful, a lot of side effects. Here comes organic intelligence. It's it focuses, it has fewer side effects because it prioritizes do no harm, feeling good, low risk. But it's like the alternative medicine. Here's a bunch of herbs and spices and supplements that won't do anything, or very little. So organic intelligence comes along. I'm saying many people may have this wondering, like organic intelligence is the safer, gentler approach that won't do anything for you or will do very limited things compared to the Western medicine approach, which is very powerful and very and has side effects. And so there's your choice. You can do the very powerful therapy with a lot of side effects, which is standard trauma therapy. Feel your feelings. Let me wave this pen in front of you and you feel your body. Or you can do the weakling organic intelligence, take it slow, gentle, enjoy, and not get anywhere, or very limited. I think that may be a premise or somewhere floating because it's just people won't believe that you could have something as powerful, and I would say even more powerful, that is not harmful, not a side effect. There are no side effects except for your pocketbook, but um, but that is what we're saying. So we are not, organic intelligence is not the weakling, nicer, gentler, but less effective approach compared to the feel your feelings. It's far more powerful, but far more risky or dangerous. It's that it's not that. And that premise could be, you may have that assumption or floating in your head because I framed the discussion based on Crypto Bro's comments. Sorry, I know my sentences can get too long and they're taxing. I'm sorry. We were talking last week and today about there's a glob of stuff. There's a glob of stuff. That's the trauma, that's the energetic residue, that's the incomplete survival, whatever. There's a glob of stuff that's painful and you want it resolved. And I presented that as common ground provisionally. And then you have mainstream approaches, feel it to heal it. And then you have OI, let's try to do orientation pleasure. And then I introduced the possible assumption that people think that the mainstream is more powerful but more risky, and OI is gentler but weaker. And I'm trying to dispel that. But more fundamentally, the assumption that the goal is to resolve the glob, that the goal is to focus on the glob and to resolve the glob, that assumption is even questioned because for organic intelligence, the resolution of that glob is actually a tiny part of what can happen in the approach, even though that's all people care about. I just want to feel better. I want my symptoms resolved. But symptom resolution is actually one aspect of something much more powerful, which is capacity growth. So when I said last week, organic intelligence does not claim to heal trauma, there are reasons for that I may get into more reasons later, but it may have implied that, oh, we're kind of weak because we don't heal trauma, whereas you heal trauma, we don't heal trauma, so we're weaker. But I want to introduce a very different idea, which is we're doing something much bigger and more profound, which is increasing capacity. And the resolution of symptoms associated with trauma happen with capacity increase, but more importantly, with capacity increase, you can get more done in life and learn more and experience more with more nuance, with more pleasure and happiness. That is hard to sell because most people don't care about improving or boosting happiness. That's foreign or boring or just not real to them. What's real to them is I'm suffering, I have brain fog, I have derealization, I have chronic fatigue, I have pain, I have panic attacks, I have nightmares, resolve them. So I get it. What's intense feels important. So you want to resolve that. But I'm just lending the idea that organic intelligence is not some flaccid weakling compared to the Western medicine of trauma therapy. It's something much more powerful and safer and more pleasurable. Yes, it prioritizes non-maleficence. by the way, for those of you who don't know, I'm a philosophy professor. I was a philosophy professor for over a decade. I taught medical ethics. I taught future doctors and pharmacists and psychologists in ethics in the medical profession. And one virtue of organic intelligence is it does prioritize non-maleficence, do no harm. It's a great virtue. And you might think that that comes at the cost of benefit, because if you're going to be safer, that means you're going to be less powerful. And I'm saying, I know I've repeated myself several times so far, and I'm sorry if I'm talking too much, but there's a belief that, you can't have something for nothing, or it's too good to be true, but it's organic intelligence is seriously saying the resolution of symptoms associated with trauma is just a tiny benefit compared, it's just, I'm not saying tiny, it's one benefit compared to a much larger benefit of capacity increase, which increases how much happiness you can have in life. And this happens through feeling better, through low intensity work, gentle work where possible. And that is more potent than feel it to heal it. And one more thing before I see to you, Rena, organic intelligence does not say never feel it to heal it. If you are, there are situations where you have to feel it to heal it. You have to feel your pain and you feel like you want to die. And that is the way forward because that's what your biology has to do. So there's a phase, or there are times and contexts in organic intelligence work where we're doing feel it to heal it. It's just that there's a much bigger picture. The feel it to heal it is simply en route to not having to do that and instead feeling pleasure and orientation and building capacity. All right. Sorry if that was a little bit too dramatic, but yeah, I have to go with my
Not
biology.
dramatic.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing people are going to have to listen to it multiple
Okay,
times
sorry. Yeah.
just to get it. No, no need to apologize either,
Yeah.
for sure. Um, I'm thinking about how, you just named here this idea that organic intelligence is not, doesn't eschew or is not against the fact that sometimes you feel things. Of course, we feel things. There's just a timing for that. And I think that's the important thing. So when Crypto Bro talks about, people like he's kind of, I think he almost lumps himself into the category of phase one. And you're saying just that's going to be a highly symptomatic care, experience.
Mm.
Um, we in organic intelligence understand what the biology itself is doing in that phase and how that is creating erratic behavior of the biology, and then therefore our actions can be that way as well. It's also unpredictable, like you just can't predict what the system is going to do. And so part of what we've been, teaching, this idea of orientation and pleasure, allows the biology to come out of these reinforced states that reinforce themselves in their unpleasantness. And part of what we're saying is that the focus on feeling or sitting with the sensations, or spending all kinds of time watching what your thoughts are and those unpleasant thoughts, spending all that time in there with all of that, so in other words, with the glob, actually tends to reinforce the glob. It makes it stronger. And so part of what we've are encouraging by orientation and orientation to pleasure and that getting stabilized in the biology is that the biology becomes more regular, right? So that bipolar oscillation between activation, activation, deactivation, that becomes more regular and doesn't get stuck one way or the other. And so as that happens, sure enough, things will arise. But as you talked about, there's now large levels of capacity because what orientation and pleasure are doing is expanding the capacity to process information so that if at some point the biology chooses to present, in a sense, I guess, some kind of content, right? Or it doesn't even have to be content, whether it's verbal or mental, like that you're aware of. It's just what the biology is doing and there's a certain level of intensity to it. It's going to be less intense than what it would be if you tried to be with that content while the biology is in that very erratic state. So, in
Yeah.
other words, as the biology organizes, sometimes the biology, like you mentioned, does want to be with some of those intense states, but it's not feeling intense. And that's the difference. And when it does so with less angst, for less time. It's certainly not very frequent because very often it experiences it, processes it, and then it's over. It's done. It's not like having to do this over and over and over again in terms of, thinking again about what my mother or my father or my uncle or my aunt, what they did to me, right? Where oftentimes in some of these other methodologies, you just spend a lot of time wallowing in that and continuing to create more and more of those thoughts, right? Because if you think about memory, memory is really just the memory of a memory of a memory of a memory. So every time you spend time sitting with it in the memory, you're actually creating the new memory of it, which is part of how it gets reinforced. And so what we're saying is that, as the biology organizes itself, right? And by organizing itself, we mean having greater and greater capacity to process information, including intense information. The easier it is to be with those things without it having a unpleasant effect on us long term. So, do some people get lucky in a sense and do some of that kind of work and it kind of helps? Yes. Does it mean that they have an increased capacity for dealing with future things? Maybe, maybe not, because really that's what we're looking for. Like, really, it's not really about resolving the past. It's about today, I can live today with a certain level of ease and a sense of competence and a sense of joy and happiness, right? And that will continue into the future. Like, that's the direction we're going. And so many people think I have to deal with the anchor around my ankles pulling me down. Like I got to deal with that first. And what we're saying is that no, the system, we can use orientation and pleasure just to cut the anchor off, let the anchor sink down to the bottom of the ocean, and you can go ahead and continue swimming forward where you want to go. And so it's like you said, it's not that it's saying we never get in touch with these kinds of things. It's just going to happen in a more organized fashion. And oftentimes, yes, we don't have to deal with it at all. The biology, what we think in our conscious mind is the trauma and the problem may not be what's really the issue. Right. And so we're spending all this time with our thoughts and our feelings and the body sensations that are unpleasant. And we think that's the thing. But very often, the thing that we think is the thing is not the thing. The biology knows what it is and it's underneath, and it can process that without us even knowing exactly what that is.
I want to follow exactly that point and try to introduce another point. Are you okay if we're a few minutes over?
Yes.
Okay, then and I know I'm very aware that I tend to that if I start to try to galvanize a point, I may take a long time, but I feel like I just have to get this across. And Crypto Bro, I'm sorry we didn't get to so many details of your post. Ren and I will discuss after what to do next time. But okay, let me try this because I think what I'm about to come to may be important. So, Crypto Bro, one of Crypto Bro's content was in standard approaches to trauma healing, you have the idea that you're going to titrate through or feel the pain in very, very small chunks. And you're going to balance the feeling of the pain in very small chunks with resources. Like, okay, so I, I was raped by a man and I need help with that. Okay, we're going to feel your sensations in very small chunks, but let's do some resourcing. Can you come up with, okay, yeah, I love my cat and I cuddle my cat. And okay, yeah, think about your cat and cuddle. And there's some resourcing. And okay, let's feel a tiny bit of the painful sensations, the trauma, tiny bit. Okay, that's good. And then let's go back to the cat. And okay, so you have that standard approach of tiny chunks and then plenty of resourcing. And some people find that to be very commonsensical, very rational. I want that. That makes sense to me. That's the way to heal. And then many of these people learn about orientation and pleasure, and they may incorporate those as helpful hacks for their exposure protocols. Like, okay, let's do some orientation. Let's do some more. Oh, your cat, you love your cat, or you're on the beach with your cat, or something. Yes, fine. How does organic intelligence contrast? One point for now. A major aspect of organic intelligence is the organic, which is th that which arises from the biology, not through top-down joint planning from the client and the practitioner, but that which arises from the biology. The biology has its own sequencing. That's a major premise. And organic intelligence through its protocols of orientation and pleasure is trying to tap into that sequencing. So if something comes up, oh, I actually want to talk about my career suddenly. We may follow that. I mean, and then, but whereas a standard practitioner might think, well, now you're getting away from the trauma healing. Let's focus on feel a little bit of the sensation of the assault, and then your cat, and then back to the and look around the room, look at that tree. But maybe talking about your career may go somewhere, or you remember being at a car. I have a Substack post where I explain a hypothetical client who was raped and how organic intelligence would work with it in positive valence, and it's very different. So I'll link to that post in the description. So the client may suddenly think of a carnival, and if the practitioner is willing to go with what's organic, the client may go to, oh, and then I was playing whack-a-mole and I was whacking those moles, and you may find that going to the whack-a-mole and the pleasure of the whack-a-mole, you could call it maybe processing the rape or assault in a positive valence, but the point is you're building capacity. You're moving towards building capacity. Okay, I'll link to the post. I'll stop there. I feel like I'm okay. I'll try to stop apologizing for myself because free association conversation is not perfect, right? It's just we gotta try our best. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think the point, I think you're making a good point, and I
Okay.
absolutely agree with the difference between top down and somehow planned between the client and the therapist activity versus what arises organically in the system. And organic intelligence teaches its practitioners to be particularly attuned to that and follow what the biology is doing, as well as follow it within an understanding of what our tendency will be to do as a client, which is I will, and this is not necessarily conscious, although it can be conscious, is I might inhibit excitement or inhibit some kind of activation that's coming up when inhibition in that moment is the exact opposite of what the biology needs. Or another point might be it's like, oh, the system is like, oh, let me relax, let me calm down now. Like I'm getting a little there, too activated. So now I'm going to do a resource to myself so I'll calm down. That would be like too much inhibition. But the other also can be that, the biology wants to zip ahead and like, tell the story. The person had a car accident and they want to come and tell every bit of the story and they just want to go, 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 go just to get the story out. And so oftentimes we'll try to slow that down a little bit because we want the biology to find that level we've talked about before, this natural organic intensity threshold.
Mm.
And that's what's going to help the biology learn to feel this thresholding process of excitation or acceleration or activation, and meeting this nice sweet spot, and then being able to allow itself to come down, 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 fully into rest, fully into ease without something interrupting that. That cycle is what the biology wants to do, but so often our habits and conditionings inside of us don't allow that to happen. So what we do as practitioners is we're kind of creating some of the guardrails so that the system will stay on course, right? And more likely be able to meet that threshold, almost like I don't know, I'm thinking like if you go bowling and kids, if they are little kids are bowling, the ball will almost always go in the gutter. It'll never hit the pins. And so bowling alleys have added these rails so that the ball doesn't go in the gutter. It just kind of hits the rail, bounces off, hits the next rail, bounces off, hits the rail, and eventually it will hit some pins down. Right. So part of what we as practitioners are doing is helping create those guardrails so you're more likely to hit the pins. That is the organic intensity threshold. And so when that happens, you know, the system comes back into its right relationship with itself and into the relationship that it wants to do. Your biology knows how to heal, it knows how to grow, it knows how to learn, right? There's just all these things that inhibit or keep that from happening. And so part of what we're doing in organic intelligence is increasing the likelihood of your biology's own natural desire to do that, to grow, heal, learn, to happen. And what we're saying is sitting with the blob ad nauseum is probably not the best way to do that.
Thank you. Rena mentioned the idea of an organic intensity threshold. You can look into my YouTube videos and Substack for that. Also, my book, which I don't have handy on me, but buy my book. It's on Amazon, Organic Intelligence, the Theory of and Practice of Auto-Organization. It'll take you through organic intelligence, the essentials clearly, and there's some nice gay erotica for you in it because I like to be weird, and you'll enjoy that too. So thank you, Rena. Any last words, Rena, and then I'll see. And thank you, Crypto Bro.
Yeah,
But
I was just gonna say, yeah, thanks for the comments that are from him that are spurring off these
yeah,
conversations. So
yes, and we'll take a look at your comments because I know we didn't do a we'll figure out what to do next. Okay, all right.